I'm Patrick. I'm a long-year DBA with Oracle products. I have more than 10 years experience in Oracle products. And since 2 years, I joined the Oracle team. And from time to time, I also give some webinars on interesting topics. And as a DBA, I think that the Enterprise Manager Clouds is a very, very interesting topic. And we tried to bring it in a way to say, okay, this is also a DBA dashboard, because there are a lot of features which some of the DBAs may not know about the Enterprise Manager. And I think it's worth to dig in a bit deeper and to get more of the knowledge of what's possible with this tool. We will also see on my hands-on where usually DBAs stop digging because they say, okay, I know this and I just need this. And I think I'll show you a bit more. Hopefully we are able to show you a really lot of things in this time. And to start getting with a bit of theory on slides. And after that, we will move on with the demo where we see, okay, this powerful it could be. As we see on the first slide, on the left side, this is the typical dashboard DBAs are used to see if they work with the Enterprise Manager. There are some graphics, some pie charts, and usually they use it more or less to do, let's say, the performance visualization and eventually to find the problems with the performance. On the right side, we see how it is structured. How does the Enterprise Manager work? We have the console, which is our entry point, and the dashboard we will see also on our hands-on lab later on. But what's behind the scene? Behind the scene, we see there is this management repository, which keeps all the information. We have the Java engine, which displays and elaborates the information. And then we see that we have a lot of agents, which are out there in the different assets and collect this information. And we will see that it will be good for you if you set it up correctly in the first time, so that you really get the most advantage of the tool itself. Underneath on the left, we see a URL. On this URL, you get most of the resources about the Enterprise Manager. I'll also show you shortly what you get on this site, because it's very, very important. If you work with it, it's always worth to have a look at it, because it really gives you some more resources and helps you to really get the most out of this product. So if we move on the next slide. Great. We see the Enterprise Manager is not just meant for the performance management. Yes, it is a crucial part of the product itself, but it's not the only part. And it's not just a simple console. We will see we have a lot of possibilities with this console. We can do the lifecycle management on-prem and in cloud. We can do configuration management. We can do the performance management, as we talked before. And we can also do a bit of incident and problem management on our databases, but not just on them. And as we see on the very left, we can also overview networking, storage, and servers, and also middleware and applications. So usually DBAs tend to use the Enterprise Manager as it's meant to, and as they're used to from the old versions, let's say, as a DBA or a DB management tool and a DB console. But this dashboard gives you way more possibilities. And I really want to show you how it evolved in the time, because even for me, when I prepared for this webinar, I found so many things I've never seen or I wasn't aware of. And I think it's worth to show it to the DBAs that some of their daily tasks can be done also within here and make it way easier for them to work with it. We see also framework infrastructure, monitoring infrastructure, and we'll see there are some really fancy stuff we can leverage using the enterprise manager. So let's move on to the next slide. And here, just an easy overview how it works and how easy it is to deploy, let's say, the agents to the whole environment. First, we install the enterprise manager, usually. And then from there, we can go to discover the targets just by, for example, inserting either the IP address, or we also, if the network configuration is set up properly, you can also go by auto-discover. To be honest, when I was a DBA and I used it, usually I did it in a mixed mode. Let's say I started by installing the enterprise manager. I inserted the hosts I wanted monitored by this tool manually. And then on the host itself, I started doing an auto discovery because it took also all the tiny little parts on the server, and I was able to monitor them directly from this console. So I did, let's say, mixed mode approach. But as you see here, usually you install it on one machine, then you try to connect all the machines you want to monitor, you want to manage. And then on top of that, we will see in the hands-on how many possibilities you'll have to, let's say, build a really nice managed, automated, and also unified environment, so that you say, if you have compliance requirements, if you have deployment requirements, you want to have a unified environment with some rules, with some compliance policies, we will see Enterprise Manager will help you on that. Okay, then let's move on to the next slide. And here, as I mentioned, usually the Enterprise Manager was used with the diagnostic and tuning pack to find, let's say, performance problems. And this is the part where most of the DBAs say, yeah, I know that, yeah, I use it for that. Then if we move on, the next is also the tuning. And also here, I assume that most of the people on the call will say, yes, I know that, and I used it, and this is the main reason I use Enterprise Manager. Then let's see what's the next. And this is the real application testing. And with the real application testing, this maybe will be something some of you may have used, some not, because in the on-premise world, it's also covered by an option which has to be paid for. But also this is very interesting if you do, for example, migrations, or if you do consolidations and so on, because you can take, let's say, the workload from one database to another one and see how the new database will behave. And even here, Oracle with the Enterprise Manager offers you ways to do this in a quite easy way. So let's go to the next slide. What's also possible? And here maybe we come in the part which some of you may not know, that the Enterprise Manager can also be used for automated patching, for compliance checks, and also for the deployment, let's say, of the new versions, so that you can keep, for example, golden images of certain versions on the Enterprise Manager, on the repository, and from there you can distribute it to your whole fleet, to your whole database environment. And you also can manage, let's say, pluggable databases and so on directly from the console. So you don't have to enter again the DB itself or to connect to the every server or so on. You just can do it from one dashboard. And this is also where the title from this webinar came from, that you have the ability with one single dashboard to overview, access, manage, and monitor all of your fleet, let's say, or all of your databases, but not just databases. Let's see also the next one. And here we see we have also the possibility to connect the Enterprise Manager to the cloud. And with this connection to the cloud, we can also manage For example, the so-called self-service service, where we can start and stop and create pluggable databases just from the console. So you can even give them policies or the grants to some simple user, not just to DBAs. And with this, they have the ability to create, let's say, some database instances on the cloud and work with them. Okay, then let's move to the next slide. And here we see just a bit of information which the Enterprise Manager introduces, that we, by densing the databases and doing a lot of consolidation, we have the ability to reduce, let's say, the workload. If we go on with the next step, we can manage, as I told before, with this tool, we can also manage the pluggable databases in detail. So to say, you don't have to access every host by host, but you can do it centralized. And what we also see on the hands-on is that we can do also kind of migrations from one system to another. And by doing so, we can also plan this. We can validate stuff. We can do the check one system against the other to see, let's say, what are the differences. If I want to migrate a pluggable database from one system to another database or to another system, from one host to another host, from one container database to another container database, we will see that the Enterprise Manager will give us a lot of tools which in the, let's say, in the preparation phase, will raise some flags or raise some hands to say, be careful or have a look at this because there are some differences and you don't run into the issues because you can do the checks before. And then just once you check everything and you're really sure that everything works fine or everything will work out fine, you can move and do for example, the migration or the copy from one system to another. Okay, and the next slide. As I mentioned before, now Enterprise Manager is also meant for the fleet maintenance, for the patching, for the upgrading, for automatic cycles, and so on. But as I also said before, it's also meant to manage, and we see it down below, that you can, for example, very easily instantiate something like real application cluster, a data guard. And this was really one of these eye-openers for me when I saw with Enterprise Manager, data guard is realized within 2 clicks, let's say. That the backup is realized with 2 clicks. So really, you have it visual, you have it easy, and if everything is set up correctly, it's really nice and handy to go with this single dashboard and with this single console to manage your environment, and you don't have to use 10,000 other tools. You don't have to learn 10,000 other languages and stuff. You just can go with this single console, with this single dashboard. Also to do a lot of management on, for example, an Oracle database appliance or even an Exadata, because we are able to access these tools with the interfaces from the Enterprise Manager. And as I told you just in the slide before, it's also possible to access cloud. So you also can manage cloud environments from your Enterprise Manager. And yeah, let's jump. I think this was the last slide, if I'm right. Yes. So now, if you stop sharing, I'll jump into my environment. And here, let's jump directly in the cloud environment. I hope you see it well. Please, Violetta, confirm that everything is nice.
All good. All good.
Okay, great. So I jump in the Cloud Console because I started my Enterprise Manager on a VM on this console. And the first thing you do if you jump into the Enterprise Manager is you'll see this, but before you jump in this, let's log out and log in. This will be the first screen you'll see if you jump in your Enterprise Manager. And let's do the login. And then the first step is, okay, we get a nice overview of our system. We see on one single dashboard, we see the most important stuff, which systems are up and running, which are down, what are the versions. We see this is a recap of some of the voices we're going into later on, here with Enterprise Manager, here with the targets. But let's do the first things first. As I showed you on the slides, one of the very most important things of the Enterprise Manager is the fact that it is connected to the resources or to the entities you want to control, you want to manage, you want to monitor. The most important thing is the connectivity to all of your systems. And for this, you have to set it up correctly. For the setup, as you're used, we see this gear. If we go in here we have the initial setup. You can do it by passing all these steps. But one of the very most important things, in my opinion, is connect your Enterprise Manager to My Oracle support. Usually, if you have a contract with Oracle, with the CSI, you have this credentials, and you should put in the credentials for the My Oracle help. Why? Because if you do so, you'll also get the advisories of new patches. You can download those patches directly to the Enterprise Manager, and you have a lot of stuff once you're connected to it that will be fetched from the system and be brought to you on this environment. And it will make it way easier if you then create kind of golden images for the fleet deployment, for the fleet management, for the incident management, for the checking of your systems, maybe sometimes also for some templates. It will make it way easier to, let's say, manage your environment. Another thing which is also very important, in my opinion, are the notifications. In the notifications, you set up the mail server, so where these mails should be sent, and also the schedule and so on. Herein, you define who should be notified for which issues, because maybe you have separation of duty. You have a DBA, you have system administrators, you have Linux, Windows administrators, you have network administrators. And by setting this correctly, it will be way better. And the distribution of the emails from the different issues you will have, you will send them to the right person in the right time. Because with the notification schedule, you can also decide some issues are very critical, so we'll send them on some hours. Some are not that critical, so just in business hours, and you can set it up this way. Another very important thing on this side is also the setup of the credentials. And here under security, you have the possibility to set up these preferred credentials. These are, for example, the credentials you will set to access the different hosts. If you say you have a Linux server where some databases are installed, or you have an Exadata where some services are installed, you have to save those credentials. Because with these credentials, then you have the ability to do everything directly here from the dashboard, and you don't have to mess around with passwords and with stuff like that, because they are saved in an encrypted method inside the repository. And from there, the system itself has the ability to access the databases, to access the servers. And then we will see, it will be really fancy, that you also can execute scripts on those servers. So if you have, for example, some scripts which has to be executed on more than one server, easy, just go in here, set it up. You already set up the preferences, so you just can create in the job library, you can create a whole library of tasks which can be stored for a later execution. And then what's also very important are the targets themselves. As I showed you before on the slides, you have the possibility to say, do an auto-discovery. For this auto-discovery, the network setup has to be set properly. So to say, you have to reach all the systems on the right ports. You have to have the correct privileges on the systems and so on. What I did, and I told you, was to say, okay, I want to add the targets manually, because once you do so, you can push an agent on that host, and then you can do an auto discovery. And by doing so, you will recognize all the services which the agent are able to verify. And after that, if you want to include them in your system and want to monitor, want to put, let's say, monitoring templates on them or so, then you can just do it by promoting these different components. And after promotion, it will be kept also in your summary. So you'll see it here, because if we see here in the overview, we have all targets, but we can also drill down if you just want to go on the agents, or we want to go on the DB instances and so on. We can also drill down. And once we added the targets and we did discovery on the different components on the server, we are able to verify on them. If we want to go more in detail, to find where are those components, we can go under here. You see this bullet. This bullet means target. If we go in here, we see all targets like it was before in here. But we can also go more in detail, saying, I want to see the hosts, for example. In our case, the only host we have is this host where we're working on, is this marketplace image of the enterprise manager cloud control. And if we go in here, we see, and as I mentioned before, we don't talk just about databases. We can also talk about, for example, Linux servers or Exadata or ODAs. We can monitor all of it. We see here a recap of CPU utilization, memory utilization, and we see a recap of the most important stuff. We see also if there are any issues, incidents, because it's down, because something isn't working properly, and so on. We see it here. But once we drill into this system, we see even more. We see it represented graphically. And the nice thing is, we also here have a recap of CPU, memory, the file system, the CPU threads, even networking. And if we want to drill down even further here, it's easy. We have here these different symbols. For example, this is the home, where's the summary. We can go with the CPU, where we see way more information. We see the memory stuff. We see also the disk stuff or the storage. We can go really in very detail. Then we also see the networking. For example, why something is behaving so weird. And also processes and so on. As you see, we see a lot of stuff. Let's jump in to the part where usually DBAs go. So this is the part which most of you know maybe. And this is the only part most of you know. Let's jump into databases. So we get the overview of the databases. This is how we usually use it. And once we are in the database, we jump in the database itself. And this is what we usually do. We look here, what is consuming the most CPU, what is consuming the most I/O, and why are we waiting so long for our statements? Maybe most of you are aware of. If not, it's always worth to have a look at the recommendations, because the ADDM findings in one look give you the idea, oh, something is going wrong on the database. And to jump in here, we say, we have some statements on the database which doesn't work out well. And I worked a lot with these recommendations, so to find the solutions for the Oracle database performance. And one other thing we usually use as DBAs, and I say maybe this is the only thing we did as DBAs, is to go in here in the Performance Hub, see the history, and here we see, oh, once we go so in detail, we also have to connect to the database itself. And as I mentioned, we have this preferred or this named credentials, which we saved in security. We jump in here and we say login, because now we're going from our centralized dashboard. We go deeper and connect directly to the system itself. And here we see what we've seen or what we used mostly from the Enterprise Manager, the performance tuning stuff. And here we see directly, oh, there is one statement which takes too much time. What's this? And then usually we went in here and we said, let's tune this SQL. By doing so, it creates such a tuning set. And we say, okay, let's have a look at this. It starts getting information about this statement, about the timings, about the components which are used with this system. And once it's finished, it gives us some findings. And to connect the dots, you remember I showed you the findings in the very beginning. So here you're doing manually what the system is doing on its own automatically from time to time. But sometimes you need it right now. And so maybe you did it this way. And here you see the considerations the system did because of how it worked. And then you can go in and visualize, let's say, the execution plans, compare them, what would happen if I apply them, and then you can apply them easily. And this is the usual way maybe you use the Enterprise Manager. But as we have seen before, maybe we should do a bit more of it, because if we go back to the summary, we will see, okay, we have issues, we have problems, and to drill down and to find those problems earlier, or don't run into issues because, for example, the table space is running out of space, or there are blocking sessions and stuff like that. What's the first thing to do? Monitoring. Monitoring is the most important thing on databases, on systems, on everything. And the Enterprise Manager is also meant for monitoring. And if we look in our first site, we see this monitoring site. The monitoring offers us the possibility to see, okay, we have issues. It offers us also the possibility to see the metrics, because the metrics are the most important thing on the monitoring, where we see, okay, we have the targets, we have these different measurements, and we have to configure them correctly. And then we can create so-called monitoring templates. What's also interesting, if you manage a lot of those systems, maybe you don't have the time to go system by system to create such a template. So you'll use the template collection. And then to move even further, we see here we have the non-production and the production. And if we go in here, we see also the metrics which are designed and how they are kept and so on. And how it behaves. You see, these are the metrics, what are the thresholds, what are the critical thresholds, and very interesting, corrective actions. What are these corrective actions? These corrective actions give you the ability to say, look, for some easy stuff, I don't want to be warned, or I don't want to access the system itself. Do it on your own. I don't want to care about this. These are very easy stuff. If it's just that we are running out of space, and I know that up until a certain level, do it on your own, just extend it. We can create those corrective actions, and we can, as we jump in one of this, give some parameters and decide what should you do. And here you take off a lot of workload from the DBA. You just give it in the hand of the system, and the system then will do it for you. You just decide how much the growth can be, from when it should start, and so on. And with these corrections, you just it does it on its own. So as a DBA, you don't have to stay behind every single system. You can let the system heal itself. As you've seen in the library, we have also this for the fix of the cursors. You can do a lot of corrective actions in here, just can say create them and so on. We've seen the
Patrick, sorry to interrupt. There's a quick question on people wondering if you were to connect to an OCI database. Could you just cover a little bit on that as well, that as part of this when you're going through it?
Yeah, sure. We'll do that.
Thanks, man.
Okay. To be honest, if you just connect a typical OCI database, we've seen that we just have to include it in the add target and go for that. We also have the possibility to manage cloud control, where we see, okay, health overview of the cloud management. We just have to set it up and then go with the cloud stuff. Another interesting thing is that in here, we also have a direct cloud voice where we can go to, for example, the cloud home. And here we also have the overview of the cloud environment. But what I told you before, there is also this self-service portal. And depending on the user you're using, you also can say, okay, the start page for your user will be this self-service portal. And on this self-service portal, it's really nice that we can jump in here. For example, this will be set up before. And once it's set up, you just can jump in here and say, oh, I just want to start up a new database instance. Okay, then I say create instance. And these are already prepared. And then I just can start one of these instances and say, okay, deploy it. And once so done, we can manage this instance from this self-service portal on the cloud side. Okay, I hope this answered the question. Then let's jump back. I was in the monitoring section. On the monitoring section, one more thing. I said, okay, we're working with templates. One important thing, I don't want to assign template by template, one by one. So what can I do? In the same section with the add target, I also have these administrative groups. I can assign some server to those groups and then assign also the templates to those groups. And once I change something on this template, I can work for all the members of these groups, and it's deployed on all of them. So I don't have to do it one by one, but I just can work with groups and arrange them way better. We see here in the overview, it's explained a bit better. It tells you how it works, how you can do it. You see the template collections, which are already created. You can create new ones. You see the hierarchy, how they are related one to the other. So you can also do parent-child stuff. And so this is the monitoring. But to prevent problems, maybe it will make sense to start with the right configuration, okay? And as I mentioned before, you will have a nitty-gritty, nice, aligned environment where everything is done the right way. To do so, we have this comparison and drift management. Maybe it's also worth mentioning the inventory and usage details, where if you want to do a quick overview, you just can go in here. You say, oh, I want to have an overview of, for example, all my databases. Okay, I see the percentage, for example, to say, maybe I want to change something. I want to bring all of them in the same version also. And maybe there is a discussion of different compartments or different, let's say, groups in your company. And some of them want this information from you. So you see the listing in here. And if you want to share it with your colleagues, you just can go and say export. It creates an Excel file. And this then can be shared with your colleagues with the information of say, recap of your system. I think with the sharing I have now, you don't see it, but it just created a nice formatted Excel file. And with this, you can share it to your colleagues. But as I mentioned, let's go back to the configuration itself, to the comparison. And with the comparison, also here, you have, for example, I have the recap. So if you say, from time to time, I'll check all my systems with this drift overview and see which targets differ from what I want to have. And I also can do a direct comparison from one to the other, like we did here, I think. Here I did a direct comparison from one system to another system. Okay, we will see later why this could be interesting. And I mentioned also compliance. For the typical compliance checks in the comparison and drift management, we have the library. In the library, we have already prepared a lot of these checks where we say, okay, a typical database system, a typical server configuration, and so on. And then we just run this compliance check against the system, okay? For example, here we did one, there is one with the database, with the billing. There are some typical templates for the systems so that we can compare them to those compliancy. Why could this also be interesting? As I mentioned before, it could also be very interesting if I want to do a migration from one system to another. So like I did here, here. I had this comparison. And in this comparison, it tells me what are the differences from one system to another. As we see on the left, it could be database stuff, it could be feature usage, it could be a lot of different differences. And this will be interesting before we do a migration from one system to another system, because by doing so, I prevent or I don't run into issues before I start the migration. I first do the check from the old system to the target system, and then say, maybe we have to change or we have to take care about these issues. And because of this, I'm aware of what will happen if I move one system to another. For example, here I did a comparison between the AM rep system to the finance subsystem. What would happen if I copy a database from A to B? Let's assume I want to copy a database from A to B. And this is why I showed you this, let's say, pre-task. Because the copy from one system to another system with the enterprise manager has become very, very easy. And when I saw this, I thought, okay, now it's really, really handy. If we go in the enterprise manager and we say migration and consolidation console, you just have to go in the migration workbench. And for this, I think it's good when you did the comparison before. And here you just can choose the first database, and then you analyze the data itself. And then you just, by doing 2 or 3 clicks, it does the job for you. You just say, create a migration activity. You select your source database, you select your destination database, you see what kind of, if you just want to do some schemas or you want some data, the whole database, and then you just say continue. And it's that easy. And I think that's really worth having a look at it, because some of you really may know how much work usually it is to say, I copy the data in a location, from that location, I copy to the next system, then I do the include and so on. And here you see with 3 clicks. And what's also very interesting, it's not just the direct workbench, you can even plan it. You can say, I create a project, and then you see, you select all the candidates, you say the destination candidates, it does the connection, It does the pre-configuration. And then you just can say, I'll do it next week, on the weekend, and so on. So even here, it really makes the life much easier for you. Another thing which goes in the same direction, which I really, really want to show you, are the jobs. Because with the jobs, we can do also a lot of work in a consolidated way, in a simplified way, and in a standardized way. We've seen we can do the monitoring, we can do the grouping, we can do a lot of jobs, let's say, automated and in always the same manner. And it's the same for the jobs. With the jobs, we can create so-called libraries. And in the library, we can define such jobs. And as you see here, it could be an operating system command. It could be an SQL script. It can be a lot of stuff we can do. Once we define the credentials in the security, as we did before, we can simply create these jobs in here. And once we've done so, we can just execute them. If we have a look at one of these jobs, like it was for the corrective actions, we can add some parameters, which can be collected, which can be evaluated in the runtime, and so on. We insert the credentials for the different hosts. We can put a schedule, but we can also go back and just from the main page here, we can say submit. As for example, I started the working process on the database where we did a bit of performance tuning. I just started the operations with this start lab job. Now let's go with the stop lab job and finish and stop my consumption. Wait, cancel. I just go and stop, submit, right, and then again submit. Now it has been submitted, and within minutes, it will stop the workload on the database. You can go on the database, have a look at sales, and within minutes, now it should reduce the workload. We should see in minutes that here the workload will drop because we stopped the workload with the jobs. And if I look at the time, I think we have 10 minutes left over. I know it's a lot of things we showed now. And I know also that Violetta, you have some more stuff to tell our participants. So I think for today, I will stop.
All right. So now it's time for Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A button. I think we have one in the chat as well. So let's have a look on this. Patrick, someone asked how the license is calculated for the enterprise manager. Can you please provide some more info on that, please?
Yeah.
I think you covered something already.
Yeah, but the thing is that I mentioned the website and I didn't show it because on the website of the Enterprise Manager, you have most of the information about the licensing, because the nice thing on the Enterprise Manager is that the basic is for free, the basic Enterprise Manager. And then you go add some packages for the different options, which then opens new possibilities. And some of those things I showed, you need some packages for the main for the usage of these features, let's say, lifecycle management pack and so on. But there is a base usage, for example, all the monitoring of the system, of the servers and so on. The baseline is for free, and then depending on which additional services you're going to use or which additional functionalities or features you're going to use, there will be these additional packages which has to be added.
All right, thanks a lot. Hope that answered the question. Okay,
There is also the link now where a good explanation of the licensing of the Enterprise Manager in the chat.
Thanks for sharing, Patrick. And I will share right now the free Cloud Coaching Clinics page link for those of you that want to check. All right. So if no further questions, I would consider this meeting to an end. And I would like to thank you all for attending the session and to say a big thank you to Patrick for presenting. And of course, we are waiting you on future events. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you also from my side.